Welcome back, Commanders. My name is Alchrist, and today I'll be briefing you on your brand new T-Doll, the cute and kind-hearted Suomi. Suomi is a support SMG wielder, shield-making, ice-generating, hard-working doll. She provides field-wide shields and passive heals to the team. She is a staple in any team setup and will make missions a lot easier to sustain. I will mention that in all my guides I will be referring to Confectant's index of skill points, since this is much easier to understand. Suomi's skill point generation mechanic is tied to a passive, Source of Warmth. She simply regains 2 skill points at the end of each turn. On top of that, the passive will restore 5% of her max HP to all allies within 6 tiles, giving 10% if they're below half HP. When allies use any action, Suomi will also apply 1 stack of Avalanche to a random enemy within 6 tiles of herself. If an enemy gains 5 stacks of Avalanche, they will take 8 stability damage. A stack of Avalanche will also be added each time they hit with another freeze debuff. Suomi will also perform an action support when an ally deals targeted damage to an enemy, dealing physical damage equal to 80% of her attack and reducing 3 stability. She then gives crit damage to the ally that dealt the damage for 2 turns, and she can do this twice per turn. And lastly, this passive gives Suomi Sleep Drift Sprint when she's above 80% HP, giving her action support 1 extra range. Suomi's basic attack is Pelting Snowflake. It has a range of 6 and deals damage equal to 80% of her attack and reduces their stability by 3. Suomi's active skill 1 is Winter's Wrath, which has a 1-turn cooldown. It has a range of 6 and deals freeze damage equal to 100% of her attack and reduces stability by 4. This attack cannot crit, but deals extra damage equal to 50% of her defense. Extra stability will also be reduced for each ally within 6 tiles of Suomi. Suomi's active skill 2 is Snow's Grace, which costs 1 skill point. It applies a shield called Frost Barrier to an ally within 6 tiles and restores 2 stability, although she cannot target herself. The strength of the barrier is equal to 130% of Suomi's attack, but cannot be stronger than the target's maximum HP. If any enemies break the Frost Barrier, they will get the Frigid debuff, which prevents any movement or displacement. She also grants a stack of defensive support to the target for each enemy within 5 tiles with them for 2 turns. This increases their defense by 30% of Suomi's defense per stack, up to 4 stacks. Suomi's ultimate is Snowfield's Radiance, which costs 5 skill points and is insanely powerful. Target 1 empty tile within 6 tiles and deals damage in a 3-tile AoE equal to 50% of her defense to any enemies and applies 2 stacks of Avalanche. She then restores 2 stability, cleanses 1 debuff, removes taunt, applies Frost Barrier, and gives 1 stack of Wintry Bastion for 3 turns to all allies. Now that's a lot of utility. This Frost Barrier is equal to 100% of Suomi's attack, and when an ally with Wintry Bastion is attacked, damage is reduced by 30% and a stack is removed. And finally, the last part of her ult places a snowflake-shaped frost tile onto the ground for 3 turns. Any enemies who end their turn standing in one of these tiles gets a frozen debuff for 2 turns. The frozen debuff decreases movement by 1, and if a second stack of frozen is applied, it changes to frigid, which again prevents all movement and displacement. It also implants freeze weakness to any enemies on the tiles as well. When deploying Suomi onto the field, the key element to playing her is utilizing a skill set to keep her allies alive. She does not do a lot of damage, but she trades that for the multi-layers of support all of her abilities do that is quite easy to forget. Keep her within 6 tiles of allies to keep her passive heal in range. When it comes to her basic rotation, turn 1, use active skill 1. Turn 2, she will have gained enough skill points to ult. Turn 3, you can use active skill 1 again. And then on turn 4, you can either basic attack or use active skill 2 if you need to support an ally. On turn 5, she will have enough to ult again. On turn 6, she can active skill 1 again. And on turn 7, she can ult again. If you have a fixed key Little Guardian, she starts at max skill points, in which you can use ultimates on turn 1, 3 and 6. And you can use the active skill 1 on turns 2 and 4. And use basic attack or active skill 2 as filler. Either way, because she has a strict 2 skill point generation per turn, if you ever use active skill 2, it will delay her ultimate cycles. But don't hesitate to use it if you need to keep a fellow doll alive. On to her pros and cons. All of her skills have a multitude of effects that you should consider before using. My rotation guide is just the most efficient skill point usage. But don't be too worried about delaying a skill or ult if you think you can get better value from it on a following turn. She is currently the only sustain that predominantly uses shields, and all the positive effects from her ultimate, like the shield, apply to every ally, no matter how far away they are. Her active skill 1 has high stability damage when she's around her allies, and can be used every second turn. Her action support will trigger twice a turn when an ally attacks, and has good range if she is above 80% HP. Lastly, she's one of the 2 dolls that can manipulate a battlefield, creating frost tiles and implanting freeze weakness. As for her cons, this can be looked at either a pro or a con, but she has no way to generate skill points faster than the fixed 2 per turn. Her passive heals aren't going to recover a lot of HP, so it's hard to recover when enemies are strong enough to break the shields. And she has low damage compared to a couple other sustains. Her best weapon is the signature, Unspoken Calling. It has attack boost, and its trait gives Suomi an extra 2 movement next turn if she moves at least 5 in the current turn. Its effect, Dense Protection, increases freeze damage dealt by allies by 10%, and her shields are 10% more powerful. When she uses her ultimate, the shield value goes up by another 10% if Suomi isn't in Stability Break. If you get the Battle Pass, you can use the Classified Manuscript. It has the same movement plus 2 trait as Unspoken Calling, and its effect Battle Rush ignores 5% of defense for each tile Suomi moves this turn, capping at 5 tiles. Each tile moved over 5 will remove 1 buff from the target. You can also use the Throg. Each trait increases damage by 5% for each debuff it has, capping at 20%. The effect from Guiding Glory that will benefit Suomi increases crit rate by 10% when allied units use support attacks, up to 30%. You can use her namesake, Suomi. Yes, Suomi's gun is named Suomi. It has the same movement plus 2 trait as the other SMGs. And Timely Gift will increase shields by 5% when applying. It also increases a passive heal by 5% for 2 turns when she applies a buff to any allies outside of herself. The last SMG you can use is MP7. It has the same movement trait as the others, and when applying buffs, increases the next skill damage by 10%. Her attachments are for the support archetype, focusing first on attack %, attack, HP %, and then defense %. Even though her damage is really low, she still needs to maximize her attack as it scales the power of her shields. However, you only need enough attack equal to the max HP of your dolls, as shields cannot go over their max HP. After that, focus on HP to scale her passive heal, and then defense to scale on the active skill 1 power. When it comes to her attachment sets to farm, Ultimate Pursuit is her best in slot, making the damage and shields of her ultimate 5% stronger with each use, capping its power at 4 ultimates. You can use the Phase Strike set. It increases damage by 15% as long as they have an elemental debuff of some kind. Suomi is not going to be doing a lot of damage, but since this is a common set to farm, you probably have spare attachments. This set can work as a filler, as you can pretty easily apply Frozen and Frigid to enemies. When it comes to her fixed keys, I would say the best ones to obtain are 203, Little Guardian. This grants max skill points for turn 1 shielding. 201, Unyielding Momentum, is a fantastic key for improving Suomi's survivability. When she uses her active skill 1, she will recover 2 stability if the target is in Stability Break or becomes Stability Broken. Her third key is Flexible. 401, Positive Feedback will refund the skill point of her active skill 2 when used on an ally below 80% HP, thus preventing delaying ultimate cast that it normally would do. 603, Logistic Support in Progress, will recover 10% of Suomi's HP and 1 stability if she is not stability broken at the end of each turn. 601, Immovable, is really powerful in PvP. If she becomes taunted, paralyzed or stunned, she will immediately cleanse it and become immune to those effects for 1 turn, and at the same time, grants an immediate frost barrier equal to 60% of Suomi's attack. This can only activate once per battle, but watch as unsuspecting Mosin Nagants accidentally make Suomi harder to kill. 403, Move Swiftly, is mostly skippable. It increases movement by 1 for each ally below 80% HP, which is a tough condition to plan for. Her common key is Mission's Blessing, increases defense by 5%, and if her HP drops below 80%, she gets a 40% defense bonus for 2 turns, but this can only happen once. The only other common key worth stealing is Sabrina's Hot Oil Protection. It increases defense, and when dealing targeted damage, it will apply movement down. Otherwise, any other common key that increases attack or HP would work. Next, we'll have a quick look at her fortifications. Not going to lie here, her fortifications are so stacked that it's hard to even explain each upgrade in a simple way. Her V1 is a massive power spike and worth pulling for. When using ultimate, it will apply 2 stacks of avalanche instead of just 1, adds a heal to her kit, recovering 30% of Suomi's max HP and 4 stability to all allies, plus gives 2 stacks of wintry bastion instead of just 1 to everyone but herself, and if they're at full HP, gives them 2 buffs for 3 turns. The first one being shelter, reducing stability damage by 2, but gets removed after an attack. And the second one is continuous healing, which restores 10% of their max HP at the end of each of their turns. This is an insane amount of utility in one skill that it actually makes me wonder if someone at Mika is indeed infatuated by Suomi. Moving on. At V2, when allies get Frost Barrier, they'll also gain Warding Light, increasing their freeze damage by 15%. This upgrade also increases her support action range by 2. At V3, her active skill 2 will grant an extra stack of defensive support for each large target around that ally, and will also grant impact response. If an ally with this buff is attacked, Suomi will heal 10% of her HP. At V4, her active skill 1 deals 125% of her defense now instead of just 50. At V5, grants the Warding Light buff an extra effect. If an enemy attacks an ally that has both Frost Barrier and Warding Light, they will lose 1 point of stability. Also, her support action now triggers 3 times a turn, while recovering 1 point of stability to all allies within 4 tiles of her. And finally, V6. Her ult becomes even more powerful by applying another buff which increases defense by 30% for 3 turns. Also now cleanses 2 buffs while removing any stuns, fears or infatuated on top of a previous taunt. It increases the heal to 50% of her HP while expanding the AoE of the frost tiles by 1, and on top of that, increasing her shield strength by 30% and increasing its cap to 150% of the HP. Just wow. To finish off, we'll have a quick look at suitable teammates to field along Suomi. Basically, any team. Suomi is the best sustain at the moment and will fit into any team. For Pacific pairings though, she would pair well with Macchiato. Since she can implant freeze weakness, it is a massive boon. Suomi can also refresh Macchiato's frost barrier if she needs to. Likewise, Lotta has freeze damage in a kit and pairs well. Here are a few examples of team compositions. Suomi obviously plays into the sustain role of any team. And that about wraps up this character briefing for Suomi. I hope this guide helps, and if you have any other suggestions on a build or teammates, make sure to leave a comment below. Until next time, Commanders.